Bonjour, bienvenue à l'unité 5. Did I pronounce that right? Anyway, welcome to Unit 5. This is a unit worth a lot on both AP exams. It's 15 to 18% on the AB exam and worth 8 to 11% on the BC exam. I'm not interested in stalling, unless you're planning on following my Instagram. So anyway, let's get into Unit 5. Okay, this unit we're going to take a step back. We've gone so hard talking about all the different things of differentiation, such as related rates, implicit, inverse, trig. It's all so exhausting. Now it's less about talking about derivatives and more about just identifying aspects of derivatives and justifying it. And before I can teach you all the things in this unit, there are a few things I need to review. First off, let's talk about terminology. And yes, it may seem like this is all review, but that's kind of the point, buddy. We need to know the basic terms before we go over the more complex stuff. So let's go. A local or relative maximum or minimum is any maximum or minimum on a graph. The highest of all local maximums is the absolute or global maximum. The lowest of all local minimums is the global or absolute minimum. Extrema or extremum is another way to refer to a maximum/minimum. Let's also review concavity. A graph is concave up when the rate of change is increasing or when the graph looks like a U. A graph is concave down when the rate of change is decreasing and the graph looks like an upside down U. Also, I just want to point out, in the first video I ever did explaining concavity like this, some guy had the audacity to say that an upside down U is called an N. Do I even have to explain why this is wrong? Finally, one more term, point of inflection. A point of inflection happens on a graph where the rate of change changes from increasing to decreasing or decreasing to increasing. Or simply put, points of inflection are where the concavity of the graph changes. So the reason I went over these terms is they are basically the cornerstone of this unit. This unit, we will explain how to find all of these by using derivative functions and second derivative functions. However, before we can do that, we have to talk about these three theorems. To flashback, in my first calculus video on this channel, an actual AP calculus teacher was kind enough to reach out to me, telling me that these three theorems are very important and always tested on the AP exam. So just ignore what I said in that video. I want to introduce you to a theorem you will likely never use, but the CED forces me to teach. We are going to cover all three of these now and explain how to use them to answer questions. As a reminder, the intermediate value theorem explains that if a graph is continuous on an interval, on that interval between the two y points, every single y value between those two values will have to exist at least once. So if the graph here is y equals x and our interval is 0 to 4, which would be y equals 0 to y equals 4, the intermediate value theorem states that every y value between 0 to 4 has to exist on the graph. So y equals 3 exists, y equals 2 exists, heck, even y equals 3.0000, oh my god, that's hard to say, 1 exists too. That's the whole point of the intermediate value theorem. The mean value theorem is a little different but follows the same logic. Essentially, it states that first, if a graph is continuous and differentiable on an interval, if you were to solve for the average rate of change across that interval, obviously that would make a secant line, and the slope of that secant line is the average rate of change. The mean value theorem says that at least one point in that function will have an instantaneous rate of change that is the same as the average rate of change, which means there is at least one point that's derivative is the same as the average rate of change over that interval. And finally, the extreme value theorem says that if a graph is continuous on an interval, at least one maximum and minimum has to exist on that interval. And yes, this also applies to a perfect horizontal line, because in that case, every single point would be considered a maximum and minimum. And you don't necessarily need to solve for what these theorems prove. You just need to state that since all of the conditions of each theorem are satisfied, whatever point has to exist within that interval. And yes, the phrases on the screen right now are the ones that will give you full points on the AP exam. Moving on, we're going to talk about three different tests. However, before we can talk about that, we first need to define what a critical point is. Essentially, a critical point is wherever there's an x value whose derivative is either equal to 0 or does not exist. The reason you need to know what this is because it helps us explain these three tests. And now we are going to go over how to perform all three tests. So let's go. The first derivative test. Let's do the function x cubed minus 3x. Let's really quickly solve for the derivative. So to first do this test, you must find all critical points. So remember, a critical point is wherever the derivative equals 0 or wherever the derivative is undefined. Because this derivative is a polynomial, it will have no points it is undefined on. So quickly solving for all the zeros, we get x equals -1 and 1. So now we must write a sign chart. Let's first write out our critical points that we know are equal to 0. Now we write all the intervals that surround the critical points. So we start on the left, -infinity to -1, then we go -1 to 1, then since that is our last critical point, we go 1 to infinity. So now that we have this sign chart, let me explain the idea. Essentially, an original function will only have maximums or minimums at critical points. A function can only change from increasing to decreasing or vice versa at a critical point. That is because those are the only places where f prime of x can change signs. So back to our sign chart. Since the chart is based on the derivative function, all we need to do is find on these intervals if f prime is positive or negative. For the first interval, -infinity to -1, just pick any number in that interval. We'll use -2. Then you plug it into the derivative function, or in our case, we'll just use the factored derivative function we found earlier. Plugging it in, we get a positive result. So the derivative is positive there. For the next interval, -1 to 1, we'll plug in 0. That gives a negative value, so the derivative is negative. For the last interval, 1 to infinity, we'll use 2. That gives us a positive value again. So now I want you to imagine how this original function would look. It would start by increasing towards a maximum at x equals -1, then it would go down to a minimum at x equals 1, then it would go all the way up from there to positive infinity. The reason I know these points are maximums and minimums is because, well, let's write it down. There's a max at x equals -1 because f prime changes from positive to negative, and a min at x equals 1 because f prime changes from negative to positive. And this on the screen is the first derivative test. A quick note that not all critical points are extremas. That is why you need to do this first derivative test. Moving on, let's go to the candidates test. Let's say we had the same function, but we had it on the interval -2 to 2, and now it was asking us to find the absolute maximum and minimum using the candidates test. Essentially what we do here is first solve for our critical points, which we already know are 1 and -1, and here is your idea. The only places there can be an absolute maximum or minimum is at the critical points or the endpoints of the interval. So it stands to reason, if you solved for the f value of all the candidates, the biggest of all of them would be the absolute maximum, and the smallest would be the absolute minimum. So let's write out all of our candidates on the screen. Let's plug each of them into our original function, and let's solve all of them. And ironically, we see pairs of the same values. This won't happen all the time, I promise. That simply means in this specific function on this interval, we write out two absolute maximums r2 at x equals -1 and 2, and we have two absolute minimums r -2 at x equals 1 and -2. Alright, final thing, the second derivative test. Essentially, the first derivative determines where the original function is increasing or decreasing. The second derivative will determine where the derivative is increasing or decreasing. This means the second derivative will also determine what the original function's concavity is at different points. If the second derivative is positive, the function will be concave up. If the second derivative is negative, the original function will be concave down. This would mean any point of inflection would happen where the second derivative is equal to 0. So back to our second derivative test. Just so you know, this can only be used on critical points that are zeros of the derivative. This cannot be used on any critical points that come from the derivative being undefined. Here's how we perform the test. We'll use the function x to the fourth minus 4x squared plus 3. For solving for the derivative, we get 4x cubed minus 8x. Let's solve for our critical points, so we get x equals 0, √2, and -√2. Now we find the second derivative, so we get 12x squared minus 8, and here's your idea. If you plug in your critical points to your second derivative, if the result is positive, that would be a local minimum. If the result is negative, that would be a local maximum. So really quickly, we plug everything in, and solving, we would get the solutions on the screen now. So we write out our answer. A local max at x equals 0 because f prime of 0 is equal to 0 and f double prime of 0 is less than 0. A local min at x equals √2 because f prime of √2 is equal to 0 and f double prime of √2 is greater than 0. And finally, a local min at x equals -√2 because f prime of -√2 is equal to 0 and f double prime of -√2 is greater than 0. And that right there is the second derivative test. So you might be wondering the point of all of this. Why do we have all of these tests to showcase how the first and second derivatives relate to the original function? Well, the reason is because you'll likely get a question like this on the AP exam. This specific one gives us the f prime equation and asks us which graph would likely be the original f graph. The way I'd recommend doing this is to make a sign chart like you did for the first derivative test. Fill everything out, and then remember, here are your helpful tips. Wherever you see the f prime function increasing, that means the original function would be concave up. Decreasing means concave down. Wherever f prime is positive, the function f would be increasing. Wherever f prime is negative, the function would be decreasing. Also look at your critical points for wherever there would be a local or absolute absolute extremum. You can also use the second derivative test if you are unsure about the concavity. All the separate ways of things we just gone over in this video should compound together to help you solve this type of question. Speaking of which, pause the video and actually solve it really quick. Let's plop up a timer on the screen. And here is your answer. I really hope you got that right. And also a quick reminder that implicit differentiation essentially goes by the same process for all that we just talked about. The only thing is that if you need a reminder of finding the second derivative for implicit equations, go ahead and watch my Unit 3 video. I'll link it in the description for you. And that, my friends, is all of Unit 5. Wait a second, there's more in this unit? God dang it. Yes, there is more, and yes, it is kind of difficult. It's called optimization. Essentially, an optimization problem will happen when you try to calculate the biggest or smallest a quantity can be, given whatever limits the problem throws at you. The hard part isn't actually calculating the optimization. That's actually really easy. All you gotta do is set the derivative function equal to 0 and solve. That's what we've been doing this entire unit. The hard part is actually setting up whatever formula you will use for an optimization problem. So here are your 4 steps to solve optimization problems. To explain these 4 steps, I will be using these 2 problems on the screen now. I'm not gonna read them to you, so you should probably pause the screen now to read them. Good? Good. Alright, here we go. Step 1. You must define your variables. In our first problem, our variables are already defined as y and x because of the original function. In the second problem, there are 4 squares being cut out of a box's corner. We'll say x is the side length of each square coming from the corners. Okay, step 2. You must now create an equation. For the first problem, we are trying to find the closest possible point to a random point on the graph. Since it is about distance, we will use the distance formula, which requires 2 points to plug into it. For the first point, x1, y1, we want to showcase any general point on the line, so what we'll say is x, 3x plus 2. For the second point, x2, y2, we will plug in the point they already gave us, 4, -1. For the second problem, it's pretty simple. It's a box, so volume, length times width times height. However, our length of 30 and width of 20 are getting squares or x's cut out from each corner, so we can say -2x on each of them. Beautiful. Now for step 3. You have to simplify each equation in terms of one variable. These problems are lucky because they're pretty much already simplified in terms of one variable. However, for each of them, we do have to multiply them both out. So for the first one, we can take the square root away, and we can do some really quick simplifying. So to simplify this in terms of one variable, we have to multiply it all out, add like terms, and this becomes our single variable function we'd optimize. For the second problem, we also simplify by multiplying everything out, and this becomes our single variable function we'd optimize. And finally, step 4, we do what we've done this entire video. We find our derivative function and set it equal to 0. So for our first problem, after finding the derivative, once we set it equal to 0, we get -1/2. However, this would be our x coordinate, so we do need to find the y coordinate by plugging it back into the original function, so we get -1/2, 1/2 for our final answer. For our second one, we first solve for our derivative. However, unfortunately, this derivative needs to be solved with the quadratic formula, and we get 2 answers in the end. However, one is outside of our domain, so the true answer would be this one, 3.92 centimeters, as our final answer. And that's it for optimization. Just remember these 4 steps and you'll be fine. Woo! And that concludes this video for Unit 5. If at all possible, please consider subscribing to this channel, as it is my non-educational channel, and watch this video, which was a vlog that I did on that channel. No commentary at the end for me though, I'm calling it early tonight. Toodaloo, my friends.